So to kick things off, thank you for attending our session. Welcome to Dreamforce. My name is Manveer Sandhu, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and founder at Zennify. For those of you that are not familiar with us or haven't worked with us, we're a technology consulting firm. We focus on Salesforce, and our primary focus is accelerated transformation and accelerated ROI. So we work primarily with financial services clients. That's the vast majority of our business. We have an incredible data practice. We do Salesforce Data Cloud. We do Databricks. We do Snowflake. We are neck deep in data. We love it. And we think that there's a strong relationship between your data infrastructure, your data platform, and artificial intelligence. So that's another area that we are leaning into. We are historically more on the cutting edge. I have an incredibly talented technical team who enables us to do so. And so we're not scared of the tech. We love the tech, but at the same time, we understand the business politics and the need for business value. So today's session will be focused a lot on that. This whole Dreamforce is heavy on the generative AI front, and it's been an interesting year, especially in banking and lending with interest rates going up. In the same year, it's been fascinating. We went from getting punched in the face to all of a sudden this tailwind from generative AI, right? So you went from your projects getting stuck in the mud potentially and organizations pulling back on funding to all of a sudden people going, what is going on here with this Chat GPT? That was an amazing catalyst, and firms like NVIDIA have really enabled AI to be accessible, right? And that's what a lot of today's session is about. Just a quick poll. How many of you guys are utilizing some form of AI in your workplace today? Raise your hand. Okay, I see a few hands. And then as far as your organizations, has anybody actually sanctioned, like formally sponsored an initiative or a POC or assigned a leader out there? Okay, Fred. So that's one of our goals today, is that maybe one of you out there will become a leader for your institution and be willing to take that leap. And what we're really going to do is get into not just the technology and the business use cases, but how do you get started, right? Because there's a lot of curiosity. I was speaking to leaders earlier this morning, and one of the things they said, and this is an institution, by the way, that has a lot of M&A going on. And so they're kind of like, how do I even rationalize AI right now, just given the priorities I have? And so I think this discussion is for you as well, right? Whether you're early in the journey, whether you're ready to experiment, whether you're trying to understand what it all is, whether you're ready to jump, into the deep end, this session is for you, okay? So without further ado, we're gonna get into a demo. I wanna introduce our amazing panel here. Sam, start with yourself, your name, your role, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, hey everybody. Really excited to be here today. Sam Friedewald, VP of Innovation at Zennify. I work closely with Manveer and our team here, Sam Kerr, building out innovative solutions on the platform. So obviously AI is one of those things that's been getting a lot of attention in the last year, and really excited to show you what we've been doing and discuss kind of, how it's going to work going in the future.
Yeah, Eric McCoy. I am Chief Experience Officer at Core Bank. I've been in the banking space for about 20 years. Did have a little bit of stint here with Zennify as well. So I've been able to kind of see both sides of it. But yeah, really, we're just getting started with AI. So it's really exciting to be able to talk about this and really dive deeper into what those possibilities are and just see how does it improve the livelihood for everybody. But the most important thing is how does it improve the livelihood of our communities. So I'm really excited about that.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Kerr. I'm Principal Architect at Zennify, and I've been spending the better half of the year head deep experimenting and researching and learning a lot of the latest and greatest generative AI technology that's been coming out. And fortunately, we'll get to show off what we've been working on today and help bring you to the future of your business and actually make sense of this technology more than the hype.
Okay, beyond the hype. Sam, turning it over to you to lead the demo. This mic is better, by the way.
All right, yeah. This one's a little low. All right, awesome. Yeah, this is way better. So at Zennify, we don't really like to just, show a lot of fluff. So like Sam Kerr said, he's been heads down building actual solutions out there that we can actually show you. So we thought it'd be best to just get right into it and show you all a demo of what we've been doing and how you could use AI at your company today. So to set it up here, so we've got a few personas that we're gonna go over for our scenario. So essentially, we've got Eric McCoy at Core Bank. He is gonna play the role of a senior commercial lender. He's newer to Core Bank, so he needs help getting information about, what they do, what their processes are. And Core Bank also specializes in healthcare financing. So it's kind of a niche product and service that they offer. And so for this use case, for this demo, Eric is going to be the lender. Myself, I'm not a doctor, as you probably already know, but I am pretending to be one at a medical practice called Zen And essentially, myself and our medical group is looking to expand into the other region that they're close to, nearby Omaha. And I'm interested in getting a practice acquisition loan to help us finance acquiring this other medical practice. So to start it off, I was just searching Google and I found Core Bank's website. You can see here they specialize in exactly what I'm trying to do. And so on this page, I found their contact email address. So I'm just going to email in, what I'm looking for. It's a little small, but I'll read it off to you. So I'm emailing and saying that, I lead a medical practice group in Omaha. We're looking to buy another practice to expand the business. I saw on your website that you provide healthcare banking services, including acquisition financing. Can you send me more information on how you can help me? Also, what is the typical time to get financing in place? We are in advanced talks, so we need to get this in place quickly. So we're going to send that off. And like I said, this is a real demo, so it's going to take a couple minutes for this to go through here. But essentially what's happening right now is we're using a combination of Salesforce functionality and also our AI solution that we built. And so we're taking advantage of email to case. So this contact email is going to be routed in there. And you can imagine that a customer service team, they don't have a lot of time to be, reading every inquiry that comes in off their website. They're focused on customers who are calling in. And so essentially, once this hits Salesforce, our AI is intercepting that email, and it's summarizing it, it's pulling out insights, and then it's actually going to create the case with the information that a human would typically need to read through the email to get, and so that we can actually route this directly to where it needs to go, and you can have better reporting on this. So here it is. It came through to Salesforce, and you can see that it's synthesized some of the data here. So you see the subject line, medical practice acquisition. It pulled that through just from reading the email. It's put the description in, just a nice summary of what what I'm looking for. And then it also, if you notice, and this seems like a little thing, but it's actually pretty important. The priority has been marked as high because you see in that email, I put at the end of it that we're in advanced talks. We need a solution quickly. So if they don't get back to me, I might just go on to another lender. So on the right as well, you see a possible solution here. So already our AI user has actually written a possible solution on the case comments so that the person can look at this and figure out, what they need to do here. So that's kind of the first step of what we built. Our AI intercepted the email. It pulled out key insights. It allows us to route this directly to Eric McCoy, who now is going to take this lead and progress it through the process at Core Bank.
Yep. Can everybody hear me? Is this good? All right, cool. So what I'll do is, so I'm new. Obviously, I've been a lender for a little while, but I'm new to Core Bank. So I really want to understand our process for what it takes and really what is that time frame for the approval process and that loan process. So I'm going to go into Slack, I'm going to ask in Slack, how long will it take for the loan process at Core Bank? Spare. So there we go. It pops up right away. So me as a new user, as a new employee, or somebody that's never done it before, maybe you're a loan processor or something, you can easily type into Slack to get that information pulled back through leveraging AI. And so then on top of it, I'm going to say, okay, I want to write an email back to the doctor to explain this to him and do that now. So there we go. Something that took an hour before, easily, we just did it in 30 seconds. And so asked the question, had all the information funneled through, then said, hey, I need to send this email, got the information up, and we're ready to go. Now, since we're going to be receiving an application, and maybe I'm, somebody that's collecting documents, or I'm an analyst, and I just want to check where one of the things that is pretty crucial in the loan process is, do we meet those regulatory requirements of the application? And so I want to know about Reg B. What is our Reg B policy? What does Reg B policy state? And there we go. Breaks it all down for me. I understand the different components of Reg B that are going to be very important in this process. So when I send that email out, I can be very cognizant of that. Plus, on top of it, if I get a response of, okay, what is the next steps, then I can just make sure that we hit those milestones. And then I can even communicate with the lending team of what they need to be expecting going forward.
Awesome. Yeah. So what you just saw there is an interaction with, our AI kind of on the back end, right? Processing the email. And then we come into Slack, and Slack is a perfect conversational interface, right? Everyone's used Chat GPT. In Slack, you're able to use it pretty much the same way. And we've combined both our own company data, or Eric's company data in his Salesforce. When he asked, how long does a practice acquisition loan take? It has access to their Salesforce history, right, to determine exactly how long that was, right? I know it's a little hard to see, but came back with about 15 to 20 days. And then he was able to also write an email response that, not only incorporated the answer to his previous question about the 15 to 20 days, but it was able to ground that data, which if you saw the keynote, then you're familiar with that terminology. But it knew, Eric's signature, his email address, his name, to be able to put that into the email response as well. So very cool use case here of AI. And then lastly, it's nice to have your public data, but with the Reg B question, sometimes you just want to have exactly what you'd get with ChatGPT right in the same interface that you're working. So really cool. Thanks, Sam Kerr, for setting up the demo. And now we're going to talk a little bit about more of the kind of, technical solution to this. So we won't get too in the weeds, but we always find it's helpful to kind of let people, see and understand like how this was architected in the background. So the first thing on the left is that email to case, which I mentioned, that went into Financial Services Cloud. And when that case hit, we essentially generated a prompt in the background that went into our cloud environment. So for this use case, we decided to build our own fine-tuned LLM. It's based off of an open source foundation model, which you see out there on the right. And that provides us just with the basics, right? The base level of what you need to do this. And so, we created that prompt, got the response, saved it to the case, and you're able to route it from there. The next thing that we did is in Slack, very similar thing. We just wrote a prompt. We got a response from our LLM. And you can see there as well that we're also connected to Salesforce there at the bottom from our LLM. So when you create the prompt and you're asking for things that are specific to your company data or Salesforce, it already knows to go out to Salesforce and make an API call, get that data, add it back into the response, and then give it back to you in the user interface, which was Slack. So this is kind of a look at how it would work with more of a custom solution. Obviously, you saw today that Salesforce is coming out with a ton of products, so you don't have to do all the work that we did to get this going. But, for some cases, maybe, this is the right solution overall. And then just talk a little bit about the training database as well. That's where we put in some of our curated training sets initially, and we ran a lot of training iterations on our model to get it to respond in the way that we want to respond. So this is kind of an overview of what you just saw and all the work that we put in to get it there.
want to open it up now if there's any questions on that architecture that was just shown, if you want to go back to that.
Right. Well, okay. Gosh, it's okay. I can just ask the questions.
Test. This was kind of,
I'll repeat the question.
this is better.
So you guys have up here fine tuning of the LLM, the training database. Who is responsible for doing that? Who's looking at the data?
Good question. So you asked who's responsible for training the data initially. And so what we did is basically we've taken, so the first thing you want to do is like identify your use cases, right? And that helps you narrow in on like what kind of data and what kind of questions you're going to ask it. So essentially what you need to do is go through and give the model an example of a response or a prompt and the response that you would want it to give you back. So you need to give it examples of basically like successful outputs, right? And so, you know, typically the business would identify the general category use cases that you want to ask. And then, you know, an IT person or your AI engineers or, you know, someone like Zennify, we would help you kind of pull out historical data and, you know, the answers that a human has provided in the past. So it could be emails, right? You could go and download emails from your Outlook where people are asking certain questions, feed it their reply that a customer service agent, you know, already sent them. So that's one example. But for who's responsible, it typically is like your IT or, you know, your AI team that would be doing that.
Yeah, but I think what's key is it's the combo, just like it is in Salesforce. You have your combo of your business user and your Salesforce admin, for example. I think that duo can work in this use case because the business person has the context of what that right answer should be or what that question is, right?
Yeah.
And then your admin could be actually the one interfacing with the LLM, right, on that side of it. So a lot of this, by the way, is evolving. You know, we don't have all the answers on this yet, but we definitely think, I can tell you confidently, to be a combination of business and IT that's going to make this successful.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is more of the kind of initial training that you're going to want to do. If you saw in Slack, we had like a thumbs up or thumbs down. That would be more for the business person using this. And typically you want to get like a pilot group to do that. And so they're asking it questions and they need to give the model feedback if it was right, if it was wrong. In some cases, you're able to type out what you would want it to say instead. So that is typically like a power user, business user task to kind of get it just a little bit closer, you know, to where you want it to be in more of like a pilot stage. Good question. All right. Well, we can build on this, and to take it outside of just this use case, we wanted to show just at a higher level what the kind of key components are, like a reference architecture, if you will, just high level. So I mentioned a foundation model. For people who don't know, that's really the base, like large models that companies like OpenAI are building, Facebook's building, Salesforce has been building. So these are those really, you know, billions of, you know, parameters, like huge models that would take like a really serious, you know, large team of AI engineers to build, with also access to a lot of, you know, public information. But what you can do is you can take that as a starting point, and then you can fine tune it to, you know, how you want to use it within your own use case. So that's what we did. We took an open source model from Hugging Face and we fine tuned it to our company. We already mentioned the training data set. So that's, you know, what I mentioned is kind of a labeled, a concept of like a labeled data set. So you want to label things as correct or incorrect.
Hey, Sam, real quick.
Yep.
Can you touch base on where it says your company's unified data and what can play the role there?
Yeah.
Be it Data Cloud, Salesforce, be it Databricks.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good segue. So we talked about like where to get the data for your training set. And that could very well come from your data lakehouse or like a data cloud, a Snowflake, a Databricks, that already has that information. And that makes this all way easier if you already have your company's data into a lakehouse or another product like that we can access. So instead of having to go around and look through emails or get like spreadsheets from people, you can just already have that within Data Cloud, for example, and segment that, download it, or connect it directly to your AI model, not only for training, but also for this dynamic grounding, which lets you add data to the output, the response that is coming back. So that's kind of what that grounding piece is, right? It knew, Eric's information. If we asked it about their business, it could pull in that from a public source. We've got our partner RelPro in the back, actually, as another example of where you'd want to feed in, some of their data into your lakehouse or, access that in real time. That can give you that combination of your private data and public data as well. So those are kind of the 4 key components, with the data lakehouse really being the most important to making this work at scale, in production.
Can we touch base a little bit on the user interface? So you noticed in the demo, we were accessing the LLM from Salesforce. We were accessing it from Slack, right? So your day-to-day business user that's in Slack or in Salesforce, maybe elaborate a little bit on how some of that magic is going to happen and why it's important to happen in a native environment to where the user already is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole idea of a co-pilot, right, or assistant. And if you've watched the keynote, Salesforce, right, is building all their products within the same application that you're already using day to day. And that's what really gives you that efficiency, right? Instead of having to go to another interface, have multiple tabs open, we want to be able to build these interfaces right where people already are, whether that's in FSC, whether it's in Slack, Teams, if that's what you use today. But that's where you can really supercharge the productivity by letting people stay with where they're at and ask questions. And that's also where a lot of the data is, right? And it just makes it that much easier to access that.
Any questions on this, on the technical landscape? Okay. Oh, there's one. Huh?
Does it take you find the data? Let's say you access our based for selection management.
Yep.
How much data do you need or identified?
Good question. Sam, do you want to answer that? She asked how much data do you need to help train, and how long does it take?
So it will come down to the prompts that you're going to want the AI to generate for you, some of those business use cases. And let's take something simple like if you have emails and they're answering a question that you already know what that question is, like some support case or a service request, and you know what the original request was in addition to the answer that was provided back by the person that assisted in that original email, then it's much faster to process because you have the prompt and the response. And if you have in the realm of a few hundred or a few thousand, you're going to have a good starting point of example records, historical, to fine-tune the model off of. So you can, obviously, the more, the better, and the better it will get in the fine-tuning process with a more of a diverse training set of a lot of different varieties of examples: long emails, short emails, simple requests, complex requests. So part of the data mining process will be to cover a broad spectrum of examples and how many of those can we get, and then fine-tune the LLM iteratively, and then be able to test after the fact and evaluate to measure the results of how it is. So we were able to fine-tune new capabilities or tasks with sometimes only a few dozen example records. I was able to fine-tune the knowledge for core bank, knowing that a loan would approximately take 15 to 20 days to close. So that was pretty easy to actually put that together and get it trained into the model. So it just depends. Some things, the more data you have, the smarter the AI.
Yeah, and the quality of the data matters as well. So the higher quality, the higher accuracy of the labels, then the less you need. How long did it take to run the training iteration last night? 1 hour. Took about an hour for the compute to actually train the model using the GPUs.
The generative AI model right now has about 3,500 example records in it for just miscellaneous use cases that we fine-tuned into it. So that for 3,500 example records, it took about 1 hour, and we run that training set. It's called an epoch, where you run through the whole training set multiple times. We did 7 epochs on that training set. So it really reinforces those records over and over again. It's just, it's teaching the AI or like practicing that knowledge over and over and over. So it really reinforces the learning. So you can do that as well. If you have fewer example records, if you really want to train something specific, you just have to be careful not to, you can get into situations where it could become biased against other things you want to train it on in the future if you have too few training.
So I have a couple follow-up questions for you, principal architect guy. So the first one is, when you say 3,500 records, are you talking about like prompt and completion examples?
Yeah, okay. Training example.
Okay, and then I'm curious, so because you're allowing business users in Slack to type in prompts, how do you guys deal with the situation? You guys have that feedback loop where that might become part of the training set or the fine-tuning, et cetera. If people are inadvertently putting customer PII into the prompts, like how do you guys screen or filter that to make sure that doesn't end up, the data set, people see it, it's exposed and
That's a perfect segue, I think, into the next conversation around the concerns of this. And this is where we get into a lot of things that, they aren't figured out yet totally, right? And you're seeing a lot around Einstein trust layer, data masking. And so that is a common concern that goes to the point number 2 around the access control, right? Not only what people are allowed to put into a prompt, but also what answers they're allowed to get back, right? So if you are using it for an HR use case for your HR team, someone who's not on the team shouldn't be able to ask, what someone's salary is, or, some of those sensitive questions. So that's a big area, I think, that, a lot of people are working on and kind of yet to be like determined on how exactly that's going to work. And so for now, we're like limiting, our use cases, right, to where we can feel comfortable of what we're going to do, or what people are going to ask and what responses they're going to get back. And we'll talk a little bit more about, how you do that and how we are, building AI with some companies right now, just to kind of keep that like boundary, in place of what we're going to do. But the other thing that is a common concern is the cloud environment. And so that's really like, where's your data living? Where are you putting in this training data? Is it within your own infrastructure that you manage? Is it within Salesforce, or are you using like more of a public service like OpenAI? And so these are things that people are trying to, decide on and figure out how this is going to work. And that's where, you maybe don't want all your data going to OpenAI, right? Like they have an enterprise product. They say, they're going to safe keep it, but it's a new company, right? It's only been around for a little bit, or at least to the public for a little bit. Whereas Salesforce, right? We all trust Salesforce to host our data. They have all the compliance, things in place that you need to feel safe about that. And the last point there too is, when you're using an LLM like OpenAI's, they want more data to help train their model too, right? And so that's where your data, your prompts and responses that you're getting back and the feedback you're giving, that's valuable information, right? And so you want to kind of keep in mind who is accessing that. Are you helping to train someone else's product? Or are you really trying to, help train your company's AI to be better? So it's something to be mindful as well.
Yeah, I mean, classic example is the question that you brought up right on that regulatory, right, Eric? So, I mean, and that's what we've been struggling with, even with getting use cases up and running with customers is, the trust thing, the security thing, it's a big deal. And people are going to err more on the side of conservatism, especially banks and credit unions. But how do you get the full power of AI without leveraging the open side of things, just given the number of records, right, and the amount of data? So we are definitely trying to bridge that gap, right? And to Sam's point, the technology is evolving very fast. You trust Salesforce. I'm counting on Salesforce solving some of that stuff, right, in the near term. In the meanwhile, limiting the use cases, doing things in a pilot kind of form, and we'll talk more about that, how you get started, how you can do a pilot, how you can experiment in kind of a safe, secure, rapid way.
Yeah, and I think a big piece for banks, where I come from that point of view, is you want to maximize the investment you're going to get out of AI, and to do that, you've got to have the trusted sources, because when you have regulators coming in and they're asking, well, how did you make that decision? We don't know, because all our sources are outside. Really need to make sure that those are well honed, because we will eventually get to a point where AI is pushing that automated decisioning, even in complex loans, because they're going to bring in all the information and understand that if it fits in this box, then you can do it. There will still be those exceptions that go to somebody else and have that. But for that to work, you have to know all the sources, and those sources have to be protected.
I'm curious. You guys have mentioned a lot about the things that you're running in somewhere. You'll be like the best infrastructure today.
Good question. Yeah, I don't know if we have decided on the best, but I think all the main providers, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, those are, I think, where a lot of people are going to end up with, and they're also building, tools to help support what you're trying to build. So it seems like Sam has a perspective on this.
Yeah. Where can you get the most GPU power, most GPUs, so the cheapest, and be able to isolate that? And that's something we've been working on with our solution, is more of like a multi-cloud type approach where we can isolate and train data perhaps in different places based on what's available to us. Just to give an example, when I went to train our LLM last night, it took almost all day of continuously requesting AWS because they were out of capacity for the type of GPU that I was using as one of their highest GPUs that they have to offer. So we've been working on ways where we can either schedule that in advance or have kind of a queue where it keeps trying until it succeeds, and then we can plan like bi-weekly or weekly to have training schedules. But that's kind of the thing too, is do you want to consider, your own hardware? You could buy GPUs and then you could fully isolate everything yourself, or can you, do you have a cloud platform of your choice? Where most of the time, we go with AWS, but Azure is great too. There's also Lambda Labs has some really interesting offerings in terms of getting GPUs, because that's the challenge. And when everyone goes to train their AI at the same time, they're using all the GPUs out there and a lot of energy behind it.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a great segue actually to the next topic we want to get into, is what the landscape looks like today for people to actually get started. And so you just heard Sam talk about GPUs. I've talked about some things where it might be a lot to build something like this on your own, right? It's a lot of work. There's a lot of infrastructure that you need to have in place. There's a lot you need to worry about, right, around getting access to GPUs. And, if you're not like a massive enterprise company like Google or Salesforce, then that can be, a little daunting to have to make sure that you have all that in place. So when we're looking at working with our customers, and a lot of times right now we're in that experimental phase, so some of that isn't as concerning when you're trying to have something that's in production, uptime, all the time, every day. But you kind of have a few different options, right, about where you can start. So in the top left is this Einstein trust boundary, and this is what you're going to hear a lot about this week. And this is, using kind of the approved or connected LLMs that Salesforce has built in to their Einstein trust layer. So they have some that they own and have been building. They've obviously have the main connection with OpenAI that they've built. And then they have some native connectors to Amazon SageMaker and Google Vertex, which is coming out, I believe, in a little while, to enable you to plug those models in and get the benefits of the trust layer and security and data privacy that you're looking for. And those are all built on a platform where you don't have to worry about availability, right? You can use Salesforce's products, and things are available, right, anytime that you want to use them. So that's a very nice, way to approach it. And then they also have their, kind of on platform configuration that you can do to build, various things. And the bottom left is kind of what we showed today, which is just the custom LLM connectivity, right? You build your own, you host it, you build an API on top of it. A lot of people aren't going to want to do that, right? We've been doing it because we've been working on it for a while. But obviously it takes a lot more work. And then in the middle is really, I think, the key component to all this and what people are going to have in place before you want to go live with this with your users and really start using it at scale. And that's the data. Like we've already talked about in this session, the importance of the data, not only for training, but to have that grounding or context when you're prompting it. So when you're using AI for business purposes, you kind of need it to know all the data that you would look up manually in different systems that your business has. Whereas like Chat GPT, like I use it sometimes at work, but it gets kind of limited, right, on what I can use it for. So whether that's data cloud or partnering with, Snowflake or Databricks, which Salesforce has announced, it's really a key component to all of this. And then on the right, when you're looking at the kind of user interface side, you've got the unsigned GPT products, which have been coming out for sales, service, marketing, whichever other cloud that you want to use. Slack, which we showed, and I hope to see some cool stuff from them this week. And then, again, if you have an advanced use case, there's always a custom solution, that you could build within Salesforce. So this is kind of the landscape that we're, looking at. And I think for us, we've always dealt with a conversation with our customers around, should I build something custom? Should I use something out of the box? It's pretty much the same conversation, right? Does the out of the box functionality work for you? Do you need a little bit more? Can we configure that with clicks instead of code? And if all other options are exhausted, right, then we can look at doing something, with code that's more custom if that's what we need to do.
Sam, just a question for you here with the announcement on Data Cloud today, which I think I heard was free for a certain amount, right?
10,000
so if you're
profiles.
10,000. So if you're trying to get something stood up in a POC type format and you don't have a data platform today, would that be a good option for you to get started?
Yeah, I think it would be. And we just got access to that a month ago. So it's pretty cool that they're letting everybody do it. And yeah, if you didn't hear, it allows you to set up 10,000 profiles, which, would be like customer records essentially. And so I think a lot of people could start using that and just check it out and, start experimenting.
Awesome. Any questions on this? Okay.
All right, cool. When it comes to, as an example of a custom solution, and I think from what I've seen so far this week, this quickly might not have to be a custom solution with what Salesforce is building, but so far, just in our experiments with customers, we've built this utility bar component where essentially you can ask it for any information in your Salesforce org, wherever you are in Salesforce. So you're on the home page or you're on a record, you can ask it anything and it will give you the data back just in this conversational kind of way. So I know it's small, but this use case, I am on an account and they have an auto loan, but instead of having to go and navigate to the related list and click around, I just ask it, what is the balance of the auto loan? And it can tell me the balance is $35,000. So just a nice, simple use case, but for a lot of people, Salesforce gets busy over time. There's a lot of different pages, a lot of different related lists and sections. So if you just want a quick answer, you're on the phone or whatnot, you can just ask it this and it'll give you, what you're looking for kind of right there, wherever you're at.
This is also an example of dynamic grounding where I think the prior question where you don't want to train your AI model on sensitive data or data that's changing very frequently. So something like a balance, bank account balance or a loan balance. In this case, there's a prompt that's generated by the utility bar where it queries a lot of the record data out of Salesforce and sends it as context as a JSON object with the prompt to the LLM to ask questions about the data that it's giving it. So the AI model was never trained on information from this org or data from this loan account, but it was provided the raw data with a person's question about it, and it was able to answer it in natural language. So it's a very powerful concept where you can essentially inject real-time data with your prompts and have the generative AI make sense of it for you.
You ever come to deal with hallucinations?
Yes. So in our early experiments, we were playing around with the online banking portal that the customers could fill out to sign up for bank and get a bank account opened. And we were playing around with what do you do when you have the generative AI try and send a friendly response when they're either approved or denied by some automatic decisioning flow that we had. And in the event that they were denied, which we didn't have a lot of training on friendly denial responses, it replied very friendly that it was going to give a gift card for hundreds of dollars to the person that was denied for the loan. So that's one example where we wouldn't want the AI model to give away free gift cards to everyone who's denied. And
Yeah.
It just didn't have the training or the context of what to do in that situation. So it always will produce a logical response, but logical, does it actually make sense for your business? It probably will not if it's not prepared for it. So things that are customer facing, we're kind of taking that away to put more of a person's eyes behind it. A business user that can review it and more of a quick auto text completion for you. And then if it looks good, then you could submit it out to the real person.
Yeah, I think that last point he made is really important. At least for the foreseeable future, all this is augmenting a person, and it's not running on its own really that much, especially like customer facing. So yeah, having a person review it first, make sure it makes sense is really critical. And also just when you're getting started, doing it in more of that pilot or experiment kind of way, because that's going to happen. Like what we found is, we really need to set the expectations of what it's going to be like in the beginning until you can get a lot of activity and a lot of training in that. So like identifying a pilot group who can read every response, think about it, spend a little bit of time like making sure it's accurate, and then giving that feedback back to the model, if it's good, if it's bad, what was bad about it. And so that just takes a little bit of time, right, to get there. But once you do get it there, then the ball still really starts rolling around, being more efficient and not having to like spend as much time reviewing that. So it's a good question though.
This iterative art use case, is it like the prompt and the question answer is all about something?
Yes.
Yeah, this example is, but if I was on the home page, I can say, give me the auto loan on Laurel Smith, right? If I give it a little bit more instruction, then that can feed into that and, save you a little bit more time. So, yep. So that's a cool example of what we built on the platform so far. The next slide is just kind of what we already looked at within Slack. So there's some cool stuff that I think they're announcing as well that's pictured in the top around summarizing channels. But moving on, I think now we want to get into a little bit about the common use cases that we're seeing in financial services.
Yeah. So let's actually kick it off with Eric. If Eric is a banker, is a chief experience officer, and Eric, what gets you pumped up? What are you thinking about? What is your institution excited about here as far as use cases and potential?
Yeah, I think we're all excited about the possibilities. It's then defining what can be reality, and that's where we're at right now. And I had a little bit of advantage with what Zennify's done, so being connected to them and understanding internally how they've kind of prioritized it, and it makes sense with maybe going after training. Making training a much more streamlined approach, a lot more faster, quicker, creating that knowledge base that I think a lot of institutions have done, but to what level is your knowledge and your data really being leveraged? Are you able to do that in a way that really improves the efficiency of your employees? And so I think we're looking at that. Like I said earlier, we're really trying to be careful of getting into that regulatory crosshairs, because if you look at articles out there, they've been very frank about what they will do. They're going to be looking for the sources and checking the sources of what you're using that AI data for. And so banks have to be able to be transparent about where that information is coming from. So being there, but I think, how do we get to reach out to our customers better? I think using AI not only to be more of an efficient organization, but then, how does that translate into how we connect with our clients? And can we do those things like send an email or a note based off of birthday and things like that, that show a little bit more value to the client, create that experience of care that a lot of organizations are trying to do, so that they differentiate themselves, because as everybody knows, banking is pretty vanilla when it comes to products. It's how you're going to differentiate yourself from an experience standpoint. And I think that's where we see the value, and we're trying to see where can we do that first. But I think internally, it's really how do we get the data into a more usable, and then how do we use it to leverage for training, really improve the knowledge base of our employees.
Any admins or developers or analysts out there? Nope. All business users. Okay. So the top section there is really interesting. It's not as sexy, but definitely we are leaning into how financial institutions can implement Salesforce more efficiently, whether it's user stories, test scripts, development. All of those are use cases that generative AI can play a big role in, right? If you look at a system like Jira, for example, on the user story side. So these are all things that we're internalizing and adopting ourselves, but we're finding in our early conversations with our clients, it's things they can actually take on because they're trying to implement themselves. They're trying to support the system. They're trying to support business users. We can introduce efficiencies like this for ourselves, and we can definitely introduce those for our customers. So that's actually a big deal.
Yeah, I'd say on the back office, testing is a big one. I know there's platforms out there that you can test out code and other things, but I think that's the place where we don't have enough resources to really be able to put people in there full time to be able to do that, and it slows down our go-to-market when it comes to projects. And so having a reliable system that is leveraged by AI to do that testing of any platform that you're trying to take live with is really important, especially updates. Like if you didn't have to have a person QA every single thing, but it went through a system that QA'd it itself with the expected outcomes, that would streamline a ton of things to the point where if you get comfortable with it, you wouldn't have to manage it so well, and it could just almost automatically update itself. And so we're looking forward to things like that.
Yeah, commercial lending, that's another area where there's been a lot of awesome discussions with the business side of things, right? And we were with nCino last week, and nCino will definitely incorporate generative AI functionality. There's a big announcements coming from them, but we're working with several institutions on how to automate some of those processes. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
So I was a commercial lender. So throughout my whole journey, I started as an underwriter, and then after managing branches, became a commercial lender. One of the biggest tasks and the most time-consuming tasks I had was creating a credit request. All the things that have to go in that credit request, all the details, all the mitigations, all those things that are really important and that you have to document. Well, that's where the future comes with AI, is that when you can focus in the sources, and you can even leverage it, because like with a tool like nCino, you already have the data there. Like you're not having to do the calculations. It's just formulating it into a message that goes to that approver, that committee that's going to be approving it. And when on some cases I was spending 40 hours putting that together because I had to go through all the different all the different financials and make sure I had it all well documented. AI can do that for you. It can formulate that. And then instead of spending that, 20 to 40 hours putting it all together, you can spend maybe 1 to 2 just going through and making sure that all the information was caught and captured in that credit request. And that will be a huge lift for commercial lenders that, they are probably one of the biggest, if it's on Salesforce, if it's nCino, they're the biggest, detractors from using that because, oh, you're taking my customer, or I don't want to put a lead in, or I don't want to put these extra things into it. When you can get a system that really works for them, that becomes so much powerful. It increases your adoption and engagement rates. And so that's the things that I'm excited about that we'll do at Core Bank.
Intelligent summarization. It's a big deal, right? It takes a lot of time. And to the extent that the engine is trained and can, output, it can be very powerful. So productivity driving, that is like the big focus. I know there's a lot of focus on the customer facing use cases and hallucinations, and there's more that has to go into that over time. But when you're talking back office and you're talking productivity, there's some real tangible things that you could do now that even sort of keep you separate from all of the compliance stuff that you've referenced, right? And so those are things that we're excited about. And if you're a thought leader for your institution, you want to be on the cutting edge of all this stuff, right? My advice is find use cases where there is pain today, right? And some of that pain could be solved with generative AI, with Salesforce, with, large language models. And is it something that you can stand up without it being, a huge security risk, or privacy risk or any of these other things? Trust me, if you take a good look inside your institution, you're going to find 10, 20, 30 use cases, right? And there's no better way to prove it than to prove it. So with that, I think we can kind of advance to just the next steps. How do you get started? How do you get going? How do you make it happen? How do you not wait till the next Dreamforce to do something, right? And the next grand release, there's enough functionality available today for you to get something going.
Yeah, and we're really excited about this because, we brought up various concerns and whatnot, right? But to Manveer's point, the best way to figure that out and to see what you're going to hit is to just get started, right, and use it. So this is kind of a 6-step path for you all to take when you're thinking about how to actually get started with this and how to prove out some value. One is just learning kind of the basics of terminology, which you'll probably do this week. 2 is identifying some use cases, and that's where, we help people do that all the time. And step 3 is just to get the experiment going. And this is where you don't have to, spend all the time architecting the best solution in the world, or you don't have to have all the risks figured out, and all the details worked out into your plan and spend a bunch of time and money doing that. We've been able to help people do it in 4 to 6 weeks. And typically this isn't, a production deployment. People aren't going to be using it for their everyday life, but it allows you to do this within the confines of a small group. You can get it approved with a low budget and a low timeline. And then you can show the executives or whoever you need to show at your company what it can do if you did just put a little bit more time and effort behind it and the business value there. And that's where once you kind of get that go ahead, then you can take the step of doing, the hard work of getting your data ready. And that's where something like Data Cloud can come in and see these other tools to make sure that when you are using this every day in production, that you have all the context and data that you need to give accurate responses and actually get the value out of it. And that's also where the next thing you want to do is evaluate what those risks are, have a plan in place to mitigate those, have a plan for people to be reviewing the responses they get back, or in the back end, reviewing the training data. And then once you kind of have that plan in place, then you can really architect and implement the full solution that people are going to use, every day with your customers.
So these are active engagements for us, 4 to 6 week engagements, commercial lending use cases, service use cases, which you're going to hear a lot about this week from Salesforce, right? Whether it's chatbots or PenFed has done some great work in the space. But this is very achievable, right? And it's not pie in the sky. It's not like wait till next Dreamforce. It's something you can get done now, right? It can be incredibly valuable for your institution.
Should I send consumer?
Consumer lending.
Yeah.
What's the thoughts on applications for consumer lending?
Easier, the way easier. I mean, you're trying to do commercial lending. You've got so many layers of regulations that it comes into, and you already have decision-making driven off score. And that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for score, DTI, and then, that really, and then income, so you really level that up to understand that into those 3 components. And then, but what's interesting, because if you go look at those direct lenders now, they're going beyond that. They're going beyond and they're a little more risky, so they have to do that because they're servicing kind of that lower tier credit quality, but they're using web searches. They're using a lot more there, and with AI, you can expand beyond just saying, hey, I'm gonna go credit score, I'm gonna go income, I'm gonna go DTI, and you can say, hey, what was their last searches, or some of the other things that may be relevant to those 5 C's of credit that you really want to understand about your clients. And so that's a big piece of it. So I think in my mind, retail is a lot easier because you're not going to have those additional complexities that you do with commercial. But it really makes it a little bit, and a little bit less risky because it's already been done in a lot of ways that's already out there in different forms.
Can you talk a bit about which use cases to write about borderline in terms of risk LLM? So to give a good example, you mentioned one about a credit decision to do some customer facing. But I actually would have thought the creating decision or making decisions to vary just areas for LLMs, but I'm not just this with areas that are kind of in between, like the obvious stuff like product information, sure, that's safe, generic information, sure, that's safe, and stuff which is potentially customer specific.
Mm-hmm.
Those areas that are few the teams are having to work in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be a target of ours, and the thing about it, it seems like it would be an easy one, would be less risk, is marketing. Because if you look at the LLM and you look at, typically AI is reliant on historical data. Well, a lot of things can happen in real time. You may have biases that are being introduced into your, into that process that may become cross discriminatory. And you have to be much more careful about that. So your use cases, as much as, you're like, oh, we'll send out 10,000 emails or whatever it is, you have to be very much more careful if AI generated to ensure you understand what's being sent out there so that you can track, because you might send out 10,000 emails. It just takes one that somebody has a problem with, and it might not have the right information into it. And so because in my opinion, I would want to be on the forefront of that from a client facing, would be marketing this first, but you have to be a little bit more careful. It's not just as easy as you would think it would be with all the marketing that happens out there. And so having a full understanding of what that's going to be and what that can include, so that you're not, and that's where the trusted sources come in, so that you're understanding that, hey, we're not sending something out that could be considered, discriminatory.
Yeah. Any other questions? We're wrapped on this. Or did you want to cover this? I think
this kind of just a summary of the last slide, but kind of the 4 steps or 4 ways that we're engaging with our customers today. It kind of depends on where you're at with your knowledge and at your company. But a lot of times we're kind of doing the advisory, the experiment together. Proof of concept is more real. Like, let's get some people using it in production and live with customers. And then the implementation, right, is really a wide rollout that a lot of you are probably used to with how you develop software today. So.
Yeah, and I would just my advice to everyone else, don't go it alone. Don't try to do it yourself. Leverage a Zennify, leverage somebody that can do it. I am, because it allows them, they're going to be practicing, and they're going to be practicing on their own. Practicing, I don't have time to put somebody in and do right now. And so they can come together with those thoughts and processes that they've already tested out a little bit and bring them into yours. I think this is one area that you don't want to, eventually you'll get to the point of manageability, and then you can start scaling it up yourself once you know how to manage it. But until that happens, you really want a partner like Zennify to do it, because it's going to be that much more important, and it really helps streamline the process a little bit easier from that perspective.
And we're, in full transparency, we are utilizing this model to do 2 things, actually 3. One is prove the concept of what generative AI can do, but also we want it to serve as a catalyst to build the data infrastructure, right? Which is a really important piece that's been highlighted. So again, the announcement of Data Cloud today, free up to 10,000 profiles. That's a big deal, right? Incorporate that as part of this POC, and now we can look at how can that scale, especially if you don't have a data strategy, you don't have a data platform. So that's a really important piece of this thing. And then last, Eric touched on this earlier, adoption, right? So once you get this thing working and users see real value, right? This is an incredible way to drive adoption across the institution, especially with a user group, a line of business where the implementation maybe didn't go great, right? Which happens. And so you got low adoption, low utilization. They're hearing about generative AI. We introduce something killer that saves significant amounts of time, that gets the executives excited, the champions excited. So it's another catalyst to driving adoption and getting more ROI out of your Salesforce and your investment that you put into the platform.
Yeah, and if you are interested in learning more about the data stuff that Manver just mentioned, come to our session tomorrow.
That's
So
right.
We'll be talking more.
Data for breakfast. I heard there's mimosas.
I thought
9:30. Right? 9:30. Not at 8 like today's. 9:30. Okay. Thank you to our panelists here. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.